The Season 4 Reloaded patch brought some long-sought changes to a few weapons and attachments, but it also changed quite a few that people weren't expecting. This video will be focusing on the balancing changes specifically, and when I talk about frames, note that I'm referring to 60 frames per second, of which each frame is 16.67 milliseconds. So I'm going to be very quickly going through the details of all the other changes before I get to the Grau, MP5, and no stock info, since those are more detailed because that's what people care about the most with this update. First up, they fixed stopping power not applying to headshots. Previously, this would cause damage to the upper chest to be doubled, but a headshot would end up being lower damage because of it. They made multiple changes to the start ammo and max ammo of various weapons. The M4 SOCOM rounds max ammo has been increased. This does not change the starting ammo. The max ammo and starting ammo of the AMAX M67 rounds, SKS 10 round mags, Striker 45 hollow point rounds, Scar and Odin default mags have all been increased. And only the starting ammo of the Scar and Odin 25 round mags has also been increased by 1 mag. So they actually have a higher starting ammo count than the 30 round mags now, which is kind of a strange change. Snipers and 2 marksman rifles have also been buffed. The AX50 has its damage range increased by a solid 25 meters. Basically, it's a one-shot kill to the limbs out to 100 meters. The HDR is now a one-shot kill to the lower torso at any range. Neither of those changes will really affect Warzone at all. Then we have the Dragunov that received an aim down sight buff, rate of fire increase, and recoil centering buff. The ADS buff is around 3 frames faster, and the rate of fire increase kind of balances out the recoil centering buff. Higher rate of fire means more recoil. The patch notes also indicate that it's now a 2-hit kill minimum, but that was actually stealth buffed a while ago. Essentially, it was changed so you should no longer get 3 hit markers. Moving on to the marksman rifles, the M2 Carbine received an imperceptible buff to its movement speed. You won't even notice it, but its one-shot kill range was increased by about 4 meters. The Kar 98 received a substantial buff all around. Its ADS speed was improved by 4 frames. Its hipfire spread is now the tightest of all marksman rifles. Its one-shot kill to the upper torso range has been increased out to about 60 meters or so. Previously, this was sitting around the 52 meter range. Moving on from those, the AK-47 received a 2-frame buff to its ADS speed. This doesn't really do much for it in terms of competing with other assault rifles, but it's better than nothing. The AMAX received a damage range nerf to its 2nd and 3rd drop-offs. These were reductions of around 4 meters and 8 meters respectively. It took them 4 months to nerf the Grau, but this nerf comes within weeks of it being launched. Kind of a strange decision to me. Its range nerf was almost as severe as the Grau for no reason. The FAL also received some changes, but I think I'm going to save that one for its own video because it might be very good in Warzone now. Okay, let's get into the nerfs that everyone is buzzing about. The no stock attachment, MP5, and finally the Grau. So first up, the no stock attachment. The notes indicate that this has increased weapon recoil and decreased aiming steadiness. There's already been a lot of talk going around that Infinity Ward has completely destroyed this attachment, but in practice, this is a minor nerf. The pre-patch versus post-patch recoil comparisons show that the only time this change is significant is when it's the only attachment on the weapon, and no one is running no stock as the only attachment. When you take over manual control of the weapon, it's even less noticeable. It's still 100% viable. The vertical recoil has only increased slightly, and if I look hard enough, the horizontal recoil also increased a bit. Next up is the MP5. Now the only nerf that has a big effect on the majority of players is the range nerf when using the default or 45 round mags. That nerf drops the 3 different ranges down to about 9 meters, 17 meters, and 26 meters respectively. This amounts to a nerf of about 3.5 meters, 2 meters, and 3 meters. So not significant, but definitely noticeable. The rest of the nerfs for the MP5 are related to the 10mm rounds that aren't all that common, honestly. They reduced the range of 10mm rounds, gave them a slight recoil increase, and reduced long-range damage. It turns out that the range has been slightly reduced by about 2 to 3 meters, but the damage at long range was actually increased from 21 torso and 18 limb to 22 torso and 19 limb damage. So they're either reverting a stealth buff they made to the 10mm rounds, or they goofed up and increased damage on accident. In general, this shouldn't cause a huge change, but it's definitely a buff. When it comes to the recoil, I'm actually at a bit of a loss here. It definitely shows that it was nerfed compared to just before the patch, but my recoil patterns on the MP5 using 10mm rounds aren't consistent at all post-patch. This is very strange considering Modern Warfare has a consistent recoil system. The thing that is consistent is that the recoil is worse every single time. I switched to another gun to make sure it wasn't maybe just stick drift affecting it on my controller, and sure enough, the Bruin worked fine and gave me consistent plots. The question then becomes, is the MP5 still the meta in Warzone? And I think it definitely is. It's not as good as it was due to the minor range nerf, of course, but it's still good with the 45 round mags out to 26 meters. That's a decent range for an SMG, and beyond that is when you should be using an assault rifle anyways. Finally, let's get into the Grau nerfs. In my video a couple days ago, I mentioned range as the biggest thing needing a nerf, and that is what we have gotten, along with a minor recoil nerf. I want to get the recoil nerf out of the way first. From left to right on the recoil plot, we have the base Grau, Nexus barrel, and Archangel barrel. The nerf has basically added a slight horizontal spread to the recoil. The vertical recoil doesn't look to be affected at all. Overall, this recoil nerf is minor and not really noticeable. I'm actually happy about this because we don't want the Grau to be ruined with awful recoil. Now let's get into the ranges of the Grau. Pre-patch, we were getting a drop-off at 34 meters and 61 meters. Post-patch, we have a drop-off at 30 meters and 48 meters. The longest damage range seems to have gotten hit the hardest. On top of this range nerf, both the Nexus and Archangel barrels received a reduction in the bonus to range they provide. Now, I didn't test the Nexus barrel at all due to time and the fact that most people will be using the Archangel barrel anyways. The Archangel pushes the 30 meter range out to about 42.5 meters and the 48 meter range out to 68 meters. It's around a 40% increase to range, give or take. A stealth nerf they applied to the Grau was a nerf to the mid-range damage from 23 to 22 damage. This allows the gun to perform the exact same in core games, but when playing Warzone against someone with full armor, it's going to take one extra shot to kill in this range and changes that time to kill from 822 milliseconds to 904 milliseconds. Again, that is past that 30 meter range or 42.5 meter range with an Archangel barrel. This is what the Grau needs, a higher time to kill due to its accuracy. Now, was this nerf enough in Warzone? Well, it's still early, but I'm going to say no. It's still far too accurate in Warzone to justify its time to kill. I would like to see them drop the 18 damage range down to 17, so the furthest range will also have an added shot to kill, but it won't affect core multiplayer. I think they also need to remove the 60 round mags. Unfortunately, it looks like the Grau/MP5 meta will remain in the game until they can manage to put out some nerfs that have some meat to them, because these nerfs are a good start, but they don't actually solve the problem. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.